Translation by Srila Prabhupada. I again offer my respectful obeisances unto the form of complete existence and transcendence, who is the liberator of the pious devotees from all distresses, and the destroyer of the further advances in atheistic temperament of the non-devotee-demons. For the transcendentalists, who are situated in the topmost spiritual perfection, he grants their specific destinations. Please repeat. I again offer my respectful obeisances.
I again offer my respectful obeisances
unto the form of complete existence and transcendence.
Unto the form of complete existence and transcendence.
Who is the liberator of the pious devotees.
Who is the liberator of the pious devotees.
From all distresses.
From all distresses.
And the destroyer of further advances.
The destroyer of further advances.
In atheistic temperament of the non-devotee-demons.
In atheistic temperament of the non-devotee-demons.
For the transcendentalists.
For the transcendentalists.
Who are situated in the topmost spiritual perfection.
Who are situated in the topmost spiritual perfection.
He grants their specific destinations.
He grants their specific destinations.
Gauda Prabhu, just one moment. Okay, looks like everything's running smooth now. So I'll mute myself and we are ready to go.
Thank you, Ramanatha. Purport. Lord Sri Krishna is a complete form of all existence, both material and spiritual. Akila means complete, or that which is not kila, inferior. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, there are two kinds of nature, prakriti, namely the material nature and the spiritual nature, or the external and internal potencies of the Lord. The material nature is called apara, or inferior, and the spiritual nature is called superior, or transcendental. Therefore, the form of the Lord is not of the inferior material nature. He is complete transcendence, and he is murti, or having transcendental form. The less intelligent men, who are unaware of his transcendental form, describe him as impersonal Brahman, but Brahman is simply the rays of his transcendental body. Yasha Prabha, Brahma Samhita 540. The devotees, who are aware of his transcendental form, render him service. Therefore, the Lord also reciprocates by his causeless mercy, and thus delivers his devotees from all distresses. The pious men who follow the rulings of the Vedas are also dear to him, and therefore the pious men in this world are also protected by him. The impious and the non-devotees are against the principles of the Vedas, and so such persons are always hampered from making advances in their nefarious activities. Some of them, who are especially favored by the Lord, are killed by him personally, as in the cases of Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, and Kamsa. And thus such demons get salvation and are thereby checked from further progress in their demoniac activities. Just like a kind father, either in his favor upon the devotees or his punishment of the demons, he is ever kind to everyone, because he is the complete existence for all individual existence. The Paramahamsa stage of existence is the highest perfectional stage of spiritual values. According to Srimati Kunti Devi, the Lord is factually understood by the Paramahamsas only. And there is gradual realization of the transcendence from impersonal Brahman to localized Paramatma, to the personality of Godhead, Purushottama, Lord Krishna. Similarly, there is gradual promotion of one's situation in the spiritual life of sannyas, Kuti Chaka, Bahudak, Harivajakacharya, and Paramahamsa are gradual, progressive stages in the renounced order of life, sannyas. And Queen Kunti Devi, the mother of the Pandavas, has spoken about them in her prayers for Lord Krishna in Canto 1, Chapter 8. The Paramahamsas are generally found among both the impersonalists and the devotees. But according to Srimad Bhagavatam, as clearly stated by Kunti Devi, pure Bhakti Yoga is understood by the Paramahamsas. And Kunti Devi has especially mentioned that the Lord descends, Paritanaya Sarunam, Bhagavad Gita 4.8, especially to award Bhakti Yoga to the Paramahamsas. So ultimately, the Paramahamsas, in the true sense of the term, are unalloyed devotees of the Lord. Srila Jiva Goswami has directly accepted that the highest destination is Bhakti Yoga, by which one accepts the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Those who accept the path of Bhakti Yoga are factual Paramahamsas. Since the Lord is very kind to everyone, the impersonalists who accept Bhakti as the means of merging in the existence of the Lord in His impersonal Brahmajyoti are also awarded their desired destination. He has assured everyone in the Bhagavad Gita 4.11, Ye yata mam prapajante. According to Srila Vishnava Chakravarti, there are two classes of Paramahamsas, namely the Brahmanadis, impersonalists, and the Premanadis, devotees. And both are awarded their desired destinations, although the Premanadis are more fortunate than the Brahmanadis. But both the Brahmanadis and the Premanadis are transcendentalists, and they have nothing to do with the inferior, material nature, full of the existential miseries of life. So thus ends Srila Prabhupada's purport. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshus Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Upakata Mayam Dadanti Swapadanti Kam. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Vanchakopa Tubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So the verse again. Bhuyo namasadre jini chide satam asambhavat yakila satvanurtaye pumstam puna paramahamsha ashrame vyavastidhanam anumrigya dasyuse. I again offer my respectful obeisances unto the form of complete existence and transcendence, who is the liberator of the pious devotees from all distresses, and the destroyer of the further advances in atheistic temperament of the non-devotee-demons. For the transcendentalists who are situated in the topmost spiritual perfection, He grants their specific destinations. So here Prabhupada mentions how Krishna comes in this material world to annihilate these demoniac principles and to protect the devotees. So here's one example Prabhupada mentions. We have Kamsa. Prabhupada quoted that verse. Paritranaya sarunam vinasaya cha duskritam dharma samstapanartaye sambhavame yuge yuge. So to deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to reestablish the principles of religion, I myself appear millennium after millennium. So Prabhupada enlightens us that actually Krishna, He primarily appears to deliver His devotees. Killing the demons is just kind of like a side thing, but the main thing is that He comes to deliver His devotee. So therefore He appears in different incarnations, millennium after millennium. So here's one demon, Kamsa, who is, the personification of, what could you say, envy, greed, just wanting everything and wanting to enjoy himself, a very selfish person, always looking after number one, who he thinks is himself. But as is warned here by Durga herself, you fool, you think you can stop yourself from being killed, you're not immortal. Actually, Krishna has already taken birth, and he will certainly kill you. So this freaked him out. And this is what happened. He got punched out by Krishna in front of everybody and brought happiness to everybody. So everyone is happy to see the demoniac principles eliminated, because then there's a peaceful society. Only the demons, they become envious and they don't want a peaceful society. They just think they want to be in control of everything. They want to enjoy everything. But this is the demoniac principle. Instead of serving Krishna, they want to serve themselves. So here's the other demon Srila Prabhupada mentions. Is Hiranyakashipu, which means Hiranya means gold, Kashipu means soft bed. So this is what they're interested in. Money, wealth, women. And here the demons, they harass the devotees. It doesn't matter if the devotee is his own son. But still, he will just practically persecute and even try to kill his own son. So this is how the demoniac nature is. Hiranyakashipu was one of the biggest demons in the universe. Took control of the universe, but yet he couldn't control his own mind. That's what Prahlad Maharaj told him. Your only enemy is your own mind, the uncontrolled mind. So therefore, just surrender to Krishna. Go to the forest and just serve Krishna. But he couldn't tolerate that. Tried to kill his son, and what happened to him? Same thing had happened to Kamsa. He got killed by Krishna. He had so many benedictions that he tried to trick himself into immortality, but he's not smarter than Krishna. Krishna came and, in fact, left all of Brahma's benedictions intact, but still killed Hiranyakashipu. He thought he figured everything out. He was only taking shelter of his own intelligence, his own physical prowess, his own austerities. But you can't get to Krishna through your own prowess. It's only by becoming humble devotee of Krishna, by having that humble service attitude of Krishna. We're reading about Gajendra the elephant, who was enjoying like anything, and he was attracted to this wonderful lake that had a very nice scent of lotus flowers and so many different things. And he was caught by the crocodile. Prabhupada says the crocodile of time or the crocodile of Maya. And they were fighting for 1,000 years till finally he realized that he couldn't win. And Krishna, by his mercy, he reminded him of his previous life as King Indradumna. And he remembered his prayers. And he surrendered to Krishna on the spot. So it took 1 second. What austerities did he perform? He was an animal. But simply because of his humble, submissive attitude and surrendering to Krishna, he was protected by Krishna. And you see that in the nature of the devotees, like Prahlad Maharaj. Look at him, very humble, very submissive, just dependent on the Lord, and that's all. So the other demon we know is Ravana. Ravana, one who makes others cry. This is the nature of the demons. They cause a lot of distress to the devotees and make people cry. So he tried to do that to Sita, none other than Lakshmi Devi herself, by trying to steal her from Ram. This is the nature of the demon. They become so proud in their prowess. He had such a powerful kingdom, such a powerful personality, very wise. He was like a great Brahmin, he was a great Kshatriya, he was a great scientist. I mean, they said he even had electricity in his home. He had built tunnels underneath continents. A very powerful personality, devotee of Lord Shiva. But yet, he tried to enjoy Sita, which is Krishna's energy, just for himself. And this is what happens. You be vanquished by the Lord. It was at Krishna's mercy, Lord Ram's mercy, that he was actually delivered. Anyone who's killed by Krishna is delivered. So this is the mercy of Krishna. Oh, excuse me. So this is the prime purpose of Krishna, is to satisfy his devotees who are in distress by killing off the demons. And Prabhupada mentions Queen Kunti, her wonderful prayers in the first canto. And here's a nice verse from the 20th verse. Just kind of summarized it. Kunti Devi says, "You are meant for the Paramahamsas, not for the rascals and fools. You are meant for the Paramahamsas and Munis." So Prabhupada explains to us how the word Muninam refers to those who are thoughtful, or to mental speculators, and the word Amalatmanam refers to one who has no dirty things in his heart. So these are the dirty things that the demons have, is this lust and greed. So if we have this lust in the heart and this greed, this is the dirty things that we need to get rid of. And this is what the heart is full of as a demon. So we have to become Amalatmanam, as Prabhupada says. They're freed from these two contaminations. So that's what Bhakti Yoga is meant for. It's meant for those whose hearts are cleansed, whose hearts are not lusty and greedy. And they engage in devotional service, Bhakti Yoga. So that's a test. When one is freed from these lusty desires, from this greed, then you can actually be situated in Bhakti Yoga. So this is how Kunti Devi, out of her also humility and submissiveness, she approaches Krishna and says, "How can I understand you? I am just merely a woman." And this is her humility as a woman. Even though she understood everything, still she took that position and approached Krishna. So this pleases Krishna very much. So we see from the light of the Bhagavatam, it talks about these swans. And here it mentions that in the autumn, all the reservoirs of water become enriched with growing lotuses. The muddy water again becomes normally clear and decorated. Just as fallen conditioned souls once more become spiritually enriched in devotional service. So let's just read this one thing here first. We should not be disappointed in our muddy life of material existence, for as soon as we voluntarily take to devotional service to the Lord, our whole life becomes clear, like water in autumn. So this is the place where the swans like to hang out, in very crystal clear ponds with lotus flowers, and they just sport in there. And this is what it's like to take a Krishna consciousness. Without Krishna consciousness, or without a relationship with Krishna, our life is considered to be barren. But as soon as the muddy mind is cleared from this amala, this dirty stuff, and that's cleared out by spiritual association, by cultivating the human spirit. Prabhupada mentions that a lot in the Life of the Bhagavad, that we should cultivate the human spirit. And if we do that, then the threefold miseries of material life, they're at once cleared off. And Queen Kunti also praises Krishna by this nice verse. Nama pankaja nabaya, nama pankaja maline, nama pankaja netraya, namaste pankajangriyaye. My respectful obeisances are unto you, O Lord, whose abdomen is marked with a depression like a lotus flower. You are always decorated with garlands of lotus flowers. whose glance is as cool as a lotus, and whose feet are engraved with lotuses. So this is from the Srimad Bhagavatam again. Prabhupada's quoting this chapter 8 of the first canto. So from Krishna, the wonderful lotus flower actually contains the seed of the entire universe. So this is like Krishna. His lotus feet, his lotus. Krishna is considered to be like a lotus. Because we think of the lotus as a very beautiful thing. It is. It's a wonderful thing. It's the most beautiful thing. So when you actually see a lotus, you can think of Krishna. So Krishna is the source of all these lotuses. Not only one lotus flower, but he can produce millions of lotus flowers. Just like there's garlands, there's so many flowers. So Krishna is the source of so many universes in the same way. It's like a big garland of lotuses. Just like I was reading about the island of Navadvip. How these, there's like 9 islands there, and around the main island there, where Mayapur is, there's like 8 leaves, lotus leaves, lotus petals, which they represent. And how just that one place is where all the holy places in the universe reside. It's amazing if we just read the glories of Navadvip Dham. It's just, unfathomable how Radharani had created that place to attract Krishna. And Krishna was so pleased that, that he said that whoever comes here, even for one day, spends the night, it's like better than performing, thousands of years of austerities and going to all the holy places. So it's a very amazing, how these places are there. They're all like lotus petals. The spiritual world is considered to be like a lotus flower, many petals. So we can see that this is Krishna's creation. Just like a seed grows into a tree, it's unlimited number of leaves. So in the same way, Krishna, Prabhupada is even saying how the universe, it comes from a seed, from the seed of Krishna. Just like we are born, he said these bodies are like little universes, how they sprout from the seed. So he said everywhere you see, everything is like that. It sprouts from the seed. So we're like, this body is like a little mini universe. And there's millions of many bodies, different forms, different shapes, according to their different desires. Krishna is so kind that he fulfills so many different desires and so many different millions of species of life. So she mentions here how the navel resembles the lotus. His garland is like the lotuses. His eyes are like considered to be like lotus petals. The Brahma Samhita even confirms that. Alola Chandraka Lasad Vanamalya Vamsi. So if we just think of Krishna, just this one verse, it describes Krishna's body with reference to the lotus. We can meditate on our whole life how beautiful Krishna is, how wise Krishna is, how Krishna manifests his creation. So this is how the yogis think. So Krishna says that the highest of all yogis is one who thinks of me. So here's a good way to think of Krishna. Just think of the lotus and how it all represents different ways of Krishna's form, his glance, how he creates the universes, everything. There's so many holy places that were created. It's just amazing. So here's some lotus flowers from the life of the Bhagavat. In the autumn season, all the reservoirs of water are full of lotus flowers. There are also flowers that resemble the lotus, but are of a different class. Among them is a flower called the Kumuda. When the sun rises, all the flowers with the Kumuda blossom beautifully. Similarly, lotus-like men take pleasure in the advent of a responsible king. But men who are like the Kumuda do not like the existence of a king. Men who want to flourish in the guise of servants of the people do not want a good king at the head of the state. They're like the Kumuda flowers, which do not take pleasure in the sunrise. The word ku means bad, and mud means pleasure. So it's interesting how this word mud, dirty things, What's the dirty things? Is we try to get pleasure ourselves. We're selfish for pleasure. Instead of trying to give Krishna pleasure, we give Krishna. We try to get pleasure for ourselves, like the demons we just mentioned, Kamsa, Hiranyakashipu, Ravana, and so many other demons that were killed by Krishna. So Prabhupada's referring here to the persons, they want to exploit the administrative power for their own self-interest. And they don't like the presence of a good king and a pious king. So this is the same thing that happened, the story of the Mahabharata, with the Pandavas and the Kauravas. They did not like the presence of a good king like King Yudhisthira, but because they were demoniac, they wanted it for themselves. So they tried all throughout their lives performing so many sinful activities and causing distress for the devotees. Finally Krishna came and killed them. But it's amazing how Kunti prayed that, let all these calamities come. Because when we have these calamities, we just think of you and we depend on you. So that's how the devotee is. They may not even want to be free from their distress when they're advanced, but it's an opportunity for them to think of Krishna. And that's another way we could see our lives. Who has not had distress in their life? And was it an opportunity for us to think of Krishna, or was it an opportunity to blame Krishna? Because what are we thinking? We're thinking that we're the enjoyer. But the devotee is very humble. He thinks, oh, I deserve more. Krishna has just given me a token of punishment. But I deserve more. So that means more surrender to Krishna and think of Krishna and take shelter of his lotus feet, which are cooling like lotus petals. Let me serve Krishna so that he could glance at me with the cooling lotus petal eyes. And they're so cool also like lotus petals. So here is Lord Chaitanya. Actually, the Lord says that he incarnates himself in every millennium. This indicates that he incarnates also in the age of Kali, as stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The incarnation in the age of Kali is Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. What's wonderful about this incarnation of Krishna is that he does not kill the miscreants, but delivers them by his causeless mercy. So, they mention in that verse that he appears in every millennium, so that indicates Kali Yuga also. So here, he comes as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he spreads the worship of Krishna through his Sankirtan movement. That's the congregational chanting of his holy names. And then he spreads Krishna consciousness. Lord Chaitanya himself spread it out all throughout India, but he empowered his pure devotee, Srila Prabhupada, to spread it all throughout the world. So we're very fortunate that we are able to take advantage of Lord Chaitanya's movement by chanting Hare Krishna, by taking advantage of the revealed scriptures, like the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Upanishads, the Mahabharata. So the devotees, we all should be and are attracted to the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya. So we're very fortunate that Lord Chaitanya doesn't kill the miscreants in this age, but he delivers them. He kills the demoniac mentality, and then he delivers us from this horrible place in the material world of Kali Yuga. And he shows the devotees how to actually dovetail everything here in his service, how to see Krishna everywhere, how to engage in devotional service, how to utilize everything for Krishna, see everything as his, and use it as such. So this is Krishna consciousness, seeing everything as Krishna's energy, everything can be used for Krishna, everything can be offered to Krishna. And then what happens? Then we can serve Krishna. We're practicing here, and we can serve Krishna in the spiritual world. Serving by playing music, offering food, making garlands. Same things we're doing here. The devotees, they can live or they can die. Because here they're serving Krishna, and in the spiritual world they're serving Krishna. It's the same, whether they're here or in the spiritual world. And they could also play with Krishna in the spiritual world. So this is Krishna consciousness. Beautiful place where the swans like to live. And the swan-like man go and enjoy the most pure, the most spiritual of all activities associating with Krishna. So this is the result of the Paramahamsa state. So it's not that you have to take sannyas and then advance into these Paramahamsa stages. But Srila Prabhupada says that the devotees are taking up Krishna consciousness and they're serving Krishna, offering everything to Krishna and doing everything for Krishna under the guidance of a spiritual master, then they are great. They're better than sannyasis. They're serving Krishna here. It's like we mentioned Gaudacandra. He wasn't a sannyasi, he was an animal. But if we just simply become humble servants of Krishna and the devotees, our spiritual master, then this is the destination. This is where the Paramahamsas go. Paramahamsa, Hamsa, swan-like. A swan, he can discriminate between water and milk. Milk represents something spiritual, water is something material. So this is with the devotees, we can become the Paramahamsa mentality by always discriminating. Is this a mature activity I'm doing? Is this for Krishna? Or is this for me? Because that demoniac mentality will always seep in. The Kamsa mentality, the Ravana mentality, the Hiranyakashipu mentality. So we have to discriminate. Become discriminative like the Paramahamsa, become munis, understand, become thoughtful about Krishna, and become free, amala. Become free from this mud of the material existence. The swans will never touch mud. They won't even touch water, or to speak of mud. But they just go for the nectar, the milk. So this is our Krishna consciousness movement. And thank you for your time and for your attention. If there's any discussion, questions, or comments, we can have them now.
Okay, I've unmuted everybody.
Go to G.
Very nice class. And as always, I really appreciate your illustrations. It helps my mind focus. Go to you mentioned about Gaudacandra. So you must have you must have a lot of meditation on that because you're studying that there in Bhagavatam. So you've had a lot of classes. And you brought up the point that Gaudacandra immediately surrendered when he remembered his past. He immediately surrendered. And we have other examples of, like Maharaj Katvanga, who in one moment surrendered.
Mm-hmm.
How does this apply to us? It doesn't seem like we can surrender in a moment. It seems like a real lifelong process at minimum. So how does this idea of as you're studying about Gaudacandra and surrendering quickly, because we'd all love to, if any of us could, if there's any way we could surrender in a minute, we would do it. Or we would want to, if we could press a button that would make all of our material desires go away so that all we really wanted was to surrender, we'd press that button in a heartbeat. But so what's the problem? How does that apply to us, that lesson of surrendering in a moment?
Yeah, Prabhupada mentions that in the purport, what you're talking about, how we can attain Krishna consciousness within a second, or it could take many millions of births. So I think as devotees, we have to see, every second, we may surrender to Krishna, we may be absorbed in Krishna consciousness, so our focus is there. So whatever helps us keep that focus, then that's great because we're absorbed in Krishna consciousnness. But what would happen, as Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, that, you can... this is, Arjuna's asking Krishna, how does he speak, how does he walk, how does he sit, all these things. In other words, how is the person absorbed in Krishna? So he's saying that this is how he is. But then he says, if you do not, what happens if you don't, if you lose your focus? Then he quotes that verse, while contemplating the objects of the senses, one develops lust. And from lust, this attachment comes, and then from that attachment, anger, and then delusion, memories lost, intelligence is bewildered, like that. And then he falls down into the material pool. So this can happen, in a second. You can fall down in a second. Just like you can actually become liberated in a second. By just, picking up Krishna, listening to something about Krishna. So it's a daily event. It's a moment-to-moment event that you can either surrender to Krishna, or it can actually be covered over by Maya. So we can see that in our daily activities. We can even analyze in our lives and see the times that we've slipped or the times that we've been with Krishna. What am I doing? I'm forgetting about Krishna. And then you just pick yourself back up. You pick up a book. You get absorbed in some material thing or material situation, somebody's material, ideas, criticisms, whatever. You just have to, another drag the mind back to Krishna. So it's an endeavor every moment and every moment. But until we come to this stage where we're not disturbed by these material things, where one is fixed, and that's the Paramahamsa stage. Prabhupada mentions, actually, that the Paramahamsa stage is that point where all these disturbances come and go, but he's not wavered, he doesn't shake, he's not, he stays fixed in Krishna consciousness. So that's what we're all striving for, is that Paramahamsa stage. Does that okay? No hurry, is that all right? Can you hear me?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was muted. Yes, I'm sorry, I was muted. I was speaking, but I didn't know that I was muted.
I'd like to ask the question.
That was very nice.
Thank you.
Nice answer. Go ahead, Madan.
Anari, you made it seem in your assumption and your question that there was something else that was keeping us from surrendering. You said if you could, you would press that button in a heartbeat. And I'm wondering what is it that you're thinking is keeping you from surrendering, that if that wasn't an influence, you would surrender? Is it something external besides yourself?
That was really my question. That actually was my question. I mean, why don't we surrender? I mean, on one level, we know we want to. We would if we could, but for some reason we can't. There's something there that's really holding us back, and that was my question. And Gauda shed a lot of light.
You don't know the answer.
Maybe you could go deeper. Well, I would say our call to unwillingness to surrender to Krishna still is there, and that's a little esoteric to fully understand. But if we just keep cleansing the heart by this process of chanting and hearing, like we're doing right now, Cheto Dharvana Marjanam, then all these anarthas will go away, and whatever that calls us unwillingness will be gone. But that's what I would say, and I'd love to hear what you would say.
Well, I know just in my own self that I'm just a rascal. There's nothing other than myself that's keeping me from surrendering. I'm getting ready to. I'm going to. It's sometimes compared to building a boat to cross the ocean, and you're building it your whole lifetime, getting ready. I'll do it probably soon. If I just hear a little bit longer, get a couple more things for sure, then I'll do it. But we just haven't done it. We're getting ready to. So it's compared to that building of the boat. But when one actually surrenders, the whole ocean shrinks, and they just leave the boat for the next person. But you're probably familiar with that example. But we haven't actually understood. So we're getting ready to. We're kind of like, it's part of the cheating propensity that we have, and that's why we feel ourselves lowly, because I know that I'm not surrendered, but it seems like the best thing to ever do, so I want to keep hearing about it, and someday I guess I will. I have to, because if there's nothing else makes any sense. But in the meantime, I'm not really surrendered, and that's the precariousness of the condition. And there's so many songs that are like that, that are trying to coax us to do, Hari Hari Vipale, why is it that, everybody else can surrender? How come I can't surrender? And that's
who is the I you're talking about? Now we know that the real you, the real spirit soul, is Jivera Swarapoi, Nitya Krishna Das, is a pure devotee of Krishna. So who is the I that won't surrender? Because we know, at least theoretically, deep in our hearts, we're all pure devotees. Even a worm in stool is a pure devotee. So who do you mean? Who are you referring to when you say I am a rascal?
It's the misuse of my independence. That, in other words, the I is the soul, but it has independence. And that particular switch, so to speak, whatever it is, when I misuse my independence, then everything cascades, the whole material external existence becomes very prevalent. And that particular point it's the subtlest point. So who is the I? It's the soul, but it's the misuse of the independence of the soul, according to the perspective of the Vaishnava philosophy.
Well, it's not this. I would say it's not the soul; it's the false ego. As soon as we misuse our independence, we're awarded by Maya. We're more prakshepatmika and avarnatmika. We're covered and we're thrown and we're covered by a body, a gross body, and we're covered by the false ego. And it's that false ego, ahambogi. Yeah, it's that false ego is what I would say is what's keeping us from surrendering. The false ego. That's the I would say, that you're speaking of. And the process to dissolve that false ego is Shravanam Kirtanam.
So
that's the only thing standing between us, and that's the only thing stopping us from pressing that button. Is this?
Does the independence exist in the soul? Or is the independence only when you have a false ego?
There's always independence.
Always independence.
So if the second or whenever simultaneously, if you misuse the independence, that's not the soul anymore. Now it's the false ego. So that switch was it switched by the false ego, or was it switched by the soul?
I see. So you're going pretty deep, Madan. No, I see your point. Excellent point. And let's let Gauda answer that, because it's getting deep.
Oh, okay.
I think it's going to boil down to that independence. And you're making a good point, Gauda. So
I brought back the picture of Queen Kunti Devi, and I think it's either in that verse or there's another verse in the Teachings of Queen Kunti. We did a book on that. And Prabhupada talks there about how Maya, she wants to test us as how firmly we're fixed in Krishna consciousness. She's also the agent of Krishna. And she doesn't allow anyone the freedom to disturb Krishna. So this is what Prabhupada says here. Therefore, she tests very rigidly to see whether we have taken to Krishna consciousness to disturb Krishna or are actually serious. This is Maya's business. So in the beginning, there will be tests by Maya, and we shall feel so many disturbances while making progress in Krishna consciousness. But if we follow the rules and regulations and chant regularly as prescribed, then we shall remain steady. If we neglect these principles, Maya will capture us immediately. Maya is always ready. We are in the ocean, and at any moment we may be disturbed. Therefore, one who is not disturbed is called Paramahamsa. So this is the point here, is that we always have that independence, and to see whether we're really serious about Krishna. I mean, the soul is desiring. That's all it could do, is desire. So do we have material desires, or are they spiritual desires? So this is Maya's constantly testing us. The soul still a little bit attracted to the material energy, or is the soul getting more and more attracted to Krishna? So the soul means, if it's desiring material things, it still has some mud. And this is what Kunti Devi says, that you cannot be understood unless one is a Paramahamsa, or unless one is she's called that other term, the Amala. the amala atmanam, that we have to be free from dirty things in the heart. So that's that lust and greed. So this is the thing. So she says only the Paramahamsas, the Munis, the amala atmanas, the ones who are free from these things, can actually understand Krishna. And Prabhupada's bringing the point that when we get to the point where we're not disturbed by all these things going on in the ocean of material existence, then we're actually Paramahamsas.
You think that refers to the verse 270 in the Bhagavad Gita, one who's undisturbed by the incessant flow of desires? So the desires don't stop. They're still coming because we're embodied.
Exactly.
But yet he's not anxious to avoid them or to get involved with them. He's nasojati nakanchati.
Exactly. Yes, that's very good. We're in the ocean of material existence. We just have to stay on the boat. Sometimes the boat rocks, sometimes it doesn't. We don't jump off the boat. But we just remain fixed like that. And those are the Paramahamsas. So yeah, it always comes from the soul. The soul is there. All it does is desire. And because of our material desires, Krishna has given us this material machine to fulfill those desires, which are actually illusory. It's like a virtual reality that we're in, desiring. The soul's in this machine, identifying with it. The body is like...
Could you clarify a point? That as long as we're embodied, then should we expect the mind is not going to be always presenting opportunities for sense gratification to us, but we have to deal with that as long as our intelligence is strong? It's not that we should expect that all of a sudden the mind is no longer agitating. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't, but I think isn't it compared to a wild tiger that you put in a cage, but it's feral, like a cat, that one should never trust it and turn its back on it, that any moment the mind will present its propaganda, but the intelligence has to stay intact at this point?
Yes. Yeah, that's described in the Bhagavatam that, we should not trust the mind. It's like a wild animal.
Couldn't we say, since we're on the subject of Paramahamsa, that when one actually attains the Paramahamsa stage, and we'll assume that, speaking of Paramahamsa, one who's actually obtained prema, one is beyond, even beyond the bhava stage, one who's attained actual prema, that at least at that point, these desires are no longer coming. That he's actually transcended all that.
Yeah.
That would be my thought. That there is even though embodied, or apparently embodied, that it's completely disconnected. And Prabhupada gives the example of a coconut, that sometimes if you shake a coconut that's really matured, that's been cut from the tree, and for a long period of time, the meat inside, the fruit inside, becomes completely disconnected from the husk, or even from the shell. The meat is separate from the shell. You can shake it, and it just rolls around. It's completely disconnected. And I would think that at that stage of prema, that we're no longer agitated by material desire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's Paramahamsa. He gives up that material part of this world and takes only the spiritual part. That's called
It's explained actually in the Madhurya Kadambini that even in that prema stage, there's further progress that's made for the siddha,
Siddha
ones that are trying to attain perfection by sadhanas, the coming into Krishna Leela through sadhana, that there'll be more advancement made even in that stage when one is with Krishna in Leela. And it gave the example of the Munis that from the previous life who took birth as gopis in that life, and the ones that couldn't go to the rasa dance, that last finishing touch was done by the extreme intensity of their separation when Krishna called them with the flute and they weren't allowed to go. There was some more perfection that was attained at that stage. So it's an ongoing process that, but the point that I was trying to make is that at this stage, it's not that the mind won't continually offer its propaganda just like it always has. And for us, it's the intelligence that we're gaining through association and the philosophy and the taste of the chanting and our sadhana that gives us the strength, at least for me, to understand clearly what's going on. And you're making that choice again, which is our independence. And we just keep making the right choices as long as often as we can and progressing on. That's the way I see. Is that correct?
Nice, Madan. That's great. And the intelligence is often described as a sword to cut the mind and cut the false ego, the intelligence. And we sharpen that, just like we're here in Bhagavatam, we're sharpening that tool, that philosophy. We're just sharpening and sharpening and sharpening that intelligence so that it's just like a surgical instrument to cut that mind and subdue it.
And practically, it's just chanting all the time. You just don't stop chanting unless you're doing something. But I mean, it's the particular sadahari. Sometimes that's said as to be offenseless. So the offenses are usually where we go when we stop chanting, unless we're hearing. But this Bhagavatam is the same as chanting Hare Krishna. It's all on that same level. But you can usually put it onto one of those, one of the activities of those 10 or 11 activities that you take up when you're not chanting. If you're introspective, you can see, okay, now I'm stopping because I'm thinking of the 8th offense. Now I'm stopping because I'm on the 11th offense. Now I'm stopping 10th offense. You can actually pretty much see it if you're not too involved with it.
Great point, Prabhu. Yeah, it probably mentions in the light of the Bhagavad about two types of people, the introspective and the extravagant. So I think that kind of another quality of a swan, Hamsa, is very, very, kind of introspective. Muni becomes like a Muni.
Well, just on that point, I have a quick question. There's the external energy, which comes in through our senses. And then there's the internal potency, which is your consciousness internally, your introspection. So I'm just wondering, is that just a coincidence that the external energy comes through the external senses? And when the internal potency is your consciousness is now rectifying what it sees by your intelligence and bringing it to the spiritual platform. So it seems like the external energy isn't seen anymore because it's being seen through your internal developed consciousness. So internal and external have to do with what's prominent. It's the external energy that's being taken without intelligence. That's the external energy. But when you have the purified intelligence that's based on Guru Shastra Sadhu, then you're not seeing external energy anymore. You're seeing Krishna.
Another point, though, there's
I think that's correct.
Thank you.
Sarvopati vinirmukam tatvaratveina nirmalam hirshikena hirshikesha semanamata uchate, that two things happen when we engage in this process of devotional service. One is we become freed from all upadis, from all designations, and our senses become purified. So even though they're the material senses, they become purified somehow by this process. And when one can actually, with these eyes, he can begin to see spiritually, he can taste spiritually, he can hear spiritually. So that the senses are capable, when they become purified by this process, to perceive spiritually, just like we see the deity. we're actually seeing God with these eyes. In a sense, speaking of senses, no pun intended, or but anyway, that verse came to mind that our senses, the two things that happen is we become freed from all the upadis.
Isn't it also said that in the second chapter of the first canto, that I think it's either 20 or 21, he says you're free from the mode of passion. You come to know scientifically of the Krishna, and that verse is very nice, those two, 20 or 21 or maybe 19, and that mode of passion is generally why the senses see like that. You become free from the mode of passion and ignorance, because these senses, in one sense, they're not material. It's only that when they're used that way. So you get this.
Good point.
I said when you see the self as master. So when you're seeing the self, which we know from chapter 8, verse 3, is the eternal nature. So when you're seeing yourself in the service mood to use everything. And I was just going to ask Gaudacandra one more point, is where you're talking about desire. If you could relate that to in the 8th line or the 7th line of the Gayatri Mantra, it says Kamadevaya. That Kamadeva, is that the desire when it's not conditioned? So the pure state of desire, that's what's being spoken of there?
That's the last, let's see, what is it, the last line?
Yeah.
Second line.
Uh-huh.
It refers to Krishna. He's the master of the senses.
The transcendental Cupid, who he creates, who's irresistible. Accommodating.
Yeah.
We become just lusty, crazy, mad to please Krishna's senses. Not to please our senses. We become mad to please his senses.
Yeah, he attracts
the transcendental Cupid. The mundane Cupid, we become mad to please our senses. We become shot by the arrow of the mundane Cupid, and all we just become so lusty. We have to do anything to please our senses and go crazy. But Kamadeva, we become mad to please his senses. Absolutely out of our mind to please his senses.
Yeah, that's a pun too, out of your mind.
Guy.
Prabhu's, we're a bit over. Just a little bit.
Oh, please, could I ask the Don Mohana question, please, just real quick?
It's okay.
You'll be able to answer this quickly, I'm sure. So you were saying about chanting, like we chant all day, and I fully understand that because it takes me all day to chant my rounds. So what offense is it when we stop chanting and our mind wanders? Like it just happens. I can see a tree and think, oh, I have to fertilize the trees. Oh, did I get both bags of fertilizer? Oh, do I have leftover from last time? Oh, I wonder if the boys put cow manure around that lychee tree. I guess I could call Dhruva. I should have looked. And it just goes on and on. How do I remember Dhruva's number? And then one thing leads to another. Oh, should I get a cell phone? And the mind wanders, and the next thing I know, it's been 10 minutes that I wasn't chanting.
Well, I don't want to be...
Is that?
We're not a fanatic. We can go crazy on that kind of a point. Just for me, we have decided that little flurry should end in a short period of time with a simple life, and then you go back to chanting again. So I think at this stage, if we tried to do that, it would be artificial, because we do have a lot of things we do, but whenever there's the idle moment, like on your computer, there's certain things that run in the background, and as soon as there's an idle moment, it does its maintenance. So the same way, whenever there's an idle moment and you have to see, that drops it into the category of, bodily maintenance you do to live healthy, to perform devotional service. So everything in a devotee's life is connected. It's not external. It's not sinful. It's not separated from your whole point. It's just that we develop, as far as I see, an affection for liking the association of Krishna. When we're chanting, we're associating with Krishna. And it's not that we always have to say anything when you're with somebody you like. You just like to be with him. So you can just chant to just be with Krishna in a simple, peaceful mind. And when there's something to do, you do that. But I don't think it would be proper to try to artificially do anything. It never sustains anything artificial. So by a devotee's lifestyle and regular hearing and chanting and developing your affection for associating with Krishna in his holy name, everything develops. Is that okay?
I want to make a suggestion also, if I can make a comment on that. That the flag that went up when the question was asked is, it takes me all day to chant my rounds, and then in the next sentence you're talking about how the mind is so difficult to control. What popped in my mind immediately was, why is it taking you all day to chant your rounds? If it's taking you all day, that means you're chanting when the mode of passion is so prominent. If there's any way possible to try to gradually reconstruct, prioritize your life so you can chant your rounds early during the Brahma Muhurta hour, I think you'll find the mind is much more peaceful. I know for myself, if I try to chant my rounds in the afternoon, my mind's going to be all over the place. During the Brahma Muhurta, it's still a battle, but gosh, it's so much easier in the early
I do
morning.
chant during Brahma Muhurta, but I'm very, very slow at that time, and that's why I don't get them all done. I try to go faster, but I'm really slow at that.
How long does it take you to chant a round?
10 minutes. I know, outrageous, isn't it?
Well, better too slow than too fast, but if you could, that's not ridiculously slow. I've heard some people tell me 15 minutes, 10 minutes is not that far from the mark. But if you could try to pick up the pace a little bit and just have more time, even if it took you 10 minutes, so that's going to be
2.5 hours.
Yeah, 2.5 hours. Thanks, Madan. Even then, if you could just somehow go to bed earlier, get up earlier, chant them in the morning, it's so much easier. I don't think. It's just it's Shastric. It's the Brahma Muhurta. It's the best time.
But actually, that's not my complete. My question is, I understand about chanting all day. I understand that. So I know what it's like to be chanting all the time. I understand that part of Madan Mohan's, what he was saying. And then when we stop chanting, that's an offense. And we can see what offense it is. So I was just wondering when our mind wanders, which offense it is. That was my real question.
Well, it's not always an offense. And I may have been a little harsh to say, because we do things that are required for our maintenance, and it's not that all of us can be Babajis and live with, maybe taking a spoonful of buttermilk every 2 days or things like that, and not sleeping and not caring. So I tried to point out a little that we not to be a fanatic, and it's not that we're all offensive. That may be a little strong. I was thinking about myself, and sometimes the mind wanders into things. So we have discrimination, taking care of business, so to speak. We have morning, evening programs. We chant as much as we can, and it's a gradual process that as we develop more intensity to increase, Krishna gives us that. He says, for those who are constantly devoted in worship, he gives us intelligence, and also for all the things that you have to take care of, he's also the one that's reminding you of all these things too. So whenever I'm reminded of the ton of stuff that I'm not getting done every day, I always think, well, thank you for Krishna for reminding me of all those things that I'm not doing also. So in that sense, we're still remembering Krishna even if we're not, because ultimately, what's the thing? Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. So when you're fertilizing your tree, you can think, of how the water, that's Krishna, the sun, the moon is Krishna, all the 10th chapter, we can be remembering all the things and connecting to Krishna. It's not a artificial impositional in the mind. So maybe it was, thank you for helping me. I was making that a little bit too strong, but I know for myself, a lot of times if I stop, I can look and see that this is still some material attachment to different things, and then I can offer a kind of a prayer that of my condition that I'm in and how these things are still important, but let me use them in your service. And that way the relationship, there's that nice definition of remembrance from the Nectar of Devotion, chapter 10, where it says to maintain a constant relationship with Krishna is what remembrance means. So we're just having a relationship. So in that sense, it's not offensive. If you're not chanting it, it's almost the same. I hope that's a little better. Thank you.
Prabhu.
Thank you. I really enjoy hearing from you.
We're about 20 minutes over.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Sorry, Ramananda.
We're having fun, Ramanandaji.
Go
We're
ahead.
churning the nectar pot here.
Okay.
Goda's got us all fired up. We can't quit.
Goda actually had to leave because he's got it's an hour later now for him, and he's got to get to work at the BBT, so he had to leave actually. Okay, so Prabhu, if you don't mind, we should really end now. So just getting a bit late. Is that okay?
Thank you for.
Thank you, Ramananda.
Oh, thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you all.
Jai. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Yay.
Jai. Haribo.
Haribo.